Okay, good evening everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to just run through a quick presentation around the cyber threat to the retail industry with a specific look at the jewelry industry as well. So obviously that's why we're all here. We're trying to keep this fairly light-hearted because even when you get too far into the weeds, we just want you to know what's coming at you. Be a very basic educational overview really, and we'll give you some tips of how to save yourself from it. So a little bit about us. I obviously own the company, HMH Consultants. I'm a former Royal Marine Commando. I did 7 years in England. Did 2 tours of Afghan, and then obviously when Afghan finished, I didn't really see the point of staying in anymore. So I retired, was honourably discharged, and then went off and got my master's degree in business, in organisational resilience. And so we opened up the HMH version to sort of partner with the UK company, so it can then become a bit more for the American market with your different laws and everything else. So we not only do retail and the jewelry industry, we also have various clients for the music industry. We have a few hedge fund managers. We manage not only their physical security, but we do their cyber stuff as well. So it's more of a bespoke look of how we would approach and how we would deal with it. How we found the industry is we were actually working within a group. When I left the Royal Marines, I was taken onto a very low profile security group for a hedge fund manager in the States. And while traveling around, we bumped into a CBG show in Miami, weirdly at the bar, which turns out to be where they usually are. We got talking about what we were actually doing, so the physical and the cyber side. And it turns out that they were actually interested. It turns out that no one's doing it in your industry. No one was offering this education, this awareness for it. So if you go onto the website, I've actually worked with quite a few of them now. And I've done not only the physical aspects and their physical assessments of their stores and their personnel, but now we're looking to do the cyber side and, educate you on these elements and help you better yourselves and raise the awareness for it. So this is what we're going to be looking at today. These are the biggest threats to sort of the online industry, not just, the retail. Everyone who has the online entity is going to suffer from these. And they don't always stay in this order, but at the moment, the top 2 are phishing scams and ransomware, simply because they can get the most money from you. So we have to say that there is no silver bullet, no golden blanket to security. There is no one-time vaccination that will help you with this, to coin a COVID phrase. What we have to do is we have to test and adjust your defenses. We permanently have to upgrade you and put new things in place. And the hackers will permanently test and adjust the way that they try and get in, the way they try and attack. So it's a permanent game of chess, realistically. What we have found in the cyber industry is that it's the human element, and in fact that goes across both the physical and the cyber industry. It's the human element is the most precarious point. It's the human behavior for it. So they know, for instance, that although they will attack you throughout the year, but they know that you don't have the education towards this. You don't know quite the awareness of how they're going to attack you. So they will send you phishing emails, for instance, throughout the year, but they know during the certain periods of holidays, the retail industry will be that much busier. You won't have that time to sit down and really scrutinize who your emails are from and what they actually mean. So they will just ramp up their attempts. They will try and get you more. And they know that human element comes into it. You see something with a phishing scam, for instance, a phishing email that looks familiar, it sounds familiar, there's the same colloquialisms being used, and then you'll just press go, and before you know it, that's how they're in. And it's, your fast-paced work environment, so because you're that much busier, you don't have that time to sit down and scrutinize it. So our aim with this is to make your systems and your companies that much harder for the hackers to get into, that much harder for the hackers to penetrate your systems, to get through your defenses. In a way, we're actually relying on that human element we just mentioned, because you will be that much harder to get into, to gain access to, that they will move on to someone who hasn't had the awareness, hasn't had the education towards this new threat. And they will move on from you because you simply take too much effort, and they will go on to them. So there we go. This is what we're going to be looking at. We'll move on. So this is obviously the first one we'll be looking at. Phishing attacks in general, right now, are your number one threat. There's obviously varied different types of phishing attacks, from spear phishing to generalization, and a few more that we're not going to get into the weeds of it, but the general aim of it, of a phishing attack, is to be a Trojan horse. So they want you to hand over as much sensitive information as possible, or download some form of malware to your systems. So, and it's got the aim of gaining access, illegal access into your systems through the trusted emails. And when they're in, they can then harvest your usernames, your passwords, and we'll start harvesting your data and cause you untold amount of trouble. So according to a recent study, there is now 37 cyber attacks a minute within the retail industry. And we know that for retailers especially, it's your brand, your reputation, and your image that create the success and the retention of your customer base. And it's that loyal customer base that keep you in business, that keep your profit margins. So we understand this as HMH, and we understand this takes years to build up, to get hold of, to maintain. But what would happen to that element if you have to then admit to your client database that while they're on your systems, click here, remember me, with the passwords, everything else, but they've been now part of your cyber breach, your data breach from your cyber attack? How are you going to admit that to them? How would they feel? And this is before we start talking about the financial implications of telling them, and the legal ramifications of you having this breach with their data. The financial implications of a phishing attack obviously vary depending on who is attacking you, but on average, they reckon it costs somewhere around $1 million now to recover from your phishing attack, and that's time spent and everything else, because the increase in frequency for these attacks has gone up in the last year. I think it's 300% during COVID, and that's according to the FBI and the NCI database here in England. And the problem is that they are having monumental success with this. So the spear phishing campaigns and the actual every other type is working, is the honest answer. Because again, we're unprepared. So what can we do? A company like Microsoft, Amazon, eBay, they all have this. They're aware of these already. They do a lot of e-commerce, so they're aware of the threat and leveled against them. So they have these in-house departments. They have the blokes, the teams ready to go, always accessing, always testing their barriers, adjusting the defenses. The smaller stores, companies with less than 100 people don't. What you would have is an outsourced company with someone as a point of contact. And again, the hackers know this. So it's not your day-to-day job. You just simply don't have that capability yet. And it turns out that not having this in-house capability does mean that you are now an easy target. You are the low-hanging fruit. So we're going to look at some case studies for it. So this represents obviously the US and the UK, and this was a questionnaire presented to a number of staff, a number of companies and their staff from an insurance company. And it speaks for itself. They're asking the questions, why are you falling for this? Why are you guys, suffering from these attacks? And the answers are obvious. This is why. You don't have that human element kicks back in. You won't have the time. They know they ramp up between Christmas, Thanksgiving, the various holidays that you are that much busier for. So we'll do an actual case study now. This comes from Jewelers Mutual. It's on their website. So the phishing email. So again, it's a spear phishing email. It's directly related to a jeweler. He knows the person apparently who sends it. And the request comes in for the $58,450. He obviously pays it instantly because it's from someone he trusts, someone he knows. It comes in that email address that he's aware of. So he's like, and pays it. The only problem is when it comes back to actually paying his supplier, and the supplier emails him a couple of weeks later saying they haven't been paid. The issue with it is because you've gone to the bank and you've followed the federal guidelines and you've followed all the legitimate rhymes and reasons for sending the money, it simply cannot be recovered. It's gone. Now, we've already had the lesson that, the average phishing email campaign costs about $1 million to recover from. But that's for, a medium-sized business. For a small business with less than 150 people, it can be anywhere between $100,000 to $500,000, depending on what they ask for and how much it costs and what they do to you. It's an endless business model for them. That's why it's so frequent now. So going back to this, going back to the case file, the store owner can't recover this money, it's gone. So he contacts Jewelers Mutual, and Jewelers Mutual say, it's part of your policy. And it tells you on the bottom, the insurance covered £10,000 of this fraudulent transfer. Instantly, that's a $48,450 lesson. Plus, your supplier still needs paying on top of that. So you start to ask yourself, well, hang on a minute. So, we need to ask these questions. Who paid why is the insurance cover so low? I mean, your policy surely states that you're covered in this. So why are they only giving you $10,000? Why are they selling this as a win on their own website? What could you have done, to get around this? We instantly say, educate yourself, raise awareness of this particular threat. He would know then, or the store owner would know that they're coming, that they are trying this on with you. You can install the appropriate software. Again, we'll go into it at the end with the bigger tips, but please don't install any free software because that then becomes an issue in itself. Always get one from a reputable, retail outlet or from a reputable security consultant. And obviously the final easiest one is to pick up the phone, call your supplier, ask him, did he really send this email? Is his bank details actually changed? You could go old school, pick the phone up. Obviously, with a different aspect of the phishing emails becomes the downloading of your malware and your ransom and your ransomware. So the aim of the ransomware is simply to hold you to ransom. It does what it says on the tin. Usually they ask for the ransom to be paid in Bitcoin or an untraceable currency. They no longer have, they don't ask for it to be paid into a certain account. It can all be traced. Now you do it in Bitcoin and they will come and get it or you send it to them. But then you're relying on them giving you the unencrypted key, the encryption key, so you can unencrypt your entire section that they've got. It used to be the gentleman's agreement that they would then only hold you to ransom once. What's becoming now more prevalent is that they don't hold you to ransom just once anymore. That while they're in and they've locked you out of either your entire system or sections of it, they're actually in there data mining what they can get, harvesting everything, all of your employee details, everything you do on your computer at work is looked at. All of your customer data, should you store anything to do with customers, they will harvest it. And then they can go on and sell these credentials in the black market areas of the internet. You know, we call it the dark web, but in the black market areas, there are people that pay for this sort of stuff. So for a user, for a name, a decent name and a surname with an accompanying address, can sell anywhere between $1 and $9. You know, and if you have passwords associated with that, it then goes up. If you have a social security number that's tagged to that address, even that becomes more. And this is traded. It's it's a business model at the end of the day. This is how they make their money. We had a question on one of the previous webinars we've done. So, what happens if you simply just don't pay it? Well, and you'd use a backup. Well, that's great, and you can do that. But then what happens if they've been in your system? The average time frame for you to notice a cybercrime in your server is between 6 and 8 months, they believe. So what happens if you then try and ignore the ransomware and then reload one of your backup sections? They're going to know that you have gone against them and you've tried to just negate the threat, and then instantly your ransom doubles. It's a lose-lose situation. You have to inform the police, you have to inform the insurance company, you have to call outside agencies such as ourselves. It's very rare that you would go about this on your own now. In one of our very first jewelry shows, we had someone come up to us to say that they had some form of lockout system, whether it was ransomware or not. They were locked out of their entire system, and what they were showing on their website was hardcore pornography. So we all think that sort of thing can be quite funny. It was humorous when she told the story, but when you go back to it, that was a family-owned store, and she was actually told by a customer that this was happening. So it's, again, the reputational damage that you can suffer from this can be horrific. They say that companies that undergo any form of cybercrime, especially the top two, usually fold within 6 months. Okay, we're very lucky. With the team that I've got, my intelligence analysts did a dive on the internet looking for posts about ransomware and about cybercrime, and we were very lucky to come across this post, and we've spoken to Stuller at length about this. This is what we believe Stuller was sent or threatened with when they were actually targeted with a cybercrime. A little bit about the group Dark Side. We found it on, this is again in the black market areas of the website. Dark Side are known to have only existed really since August 2020. And during that period, they have had multiple $1 million payouts for this ransomware. Each time they really do their social engineering and they re-encrypt, and they differ the encryption key each time. So it's not even similar to the last. That's what makes them that much worse. So like we said, we spoke to Stuller about this at length, and we're very lucky that they allow us to use this, although it's in public domain. Companies don't like this sort of thing being published, but because of, they said, the industry is that much unprepared for this sort of attack. We're used to the snatch and the grabs and the break-ins, perhaps the hold-ups. It's a horrific side of the business. But this is now another threat. A bloke perpetrator can steal a $50,000 Rolex from you, for instance, and run out the front door. But you've got him on camera, you know what he looks like, things like that. These people can steal millions from you, having not even stepped foot inside your premise. You would have no idea, man, woman, black or white, you just simply wouldn't know. And they just come at you and they encrypt everything and you have to pay. So again, very lucky that Stuller allow us to sort of raise awareness in the education levels in this industry. Having been a member of their, having had this cybercrime, they've now brought on a whole team. and they're going through it now. And they're up in their defences. They're now testing, moving their chess pieces to make sure no one else can get in again. So now we go back to another Jewelers Mutual case study. So instantly, so this is again very different. So this retailer was hit by a ransomware, but instead of going through a phishing email, it actually came through an open vulnerability in his website or his infrastructure. It doesn't really tell you his network. So how a hacker would look to get in is they run a vulnerability scan, much similar, very similar to the ones we run at HMH. So we will tell you they come up in critical and high errors, and these are the ones that they look for. Instantly, if they find that, they go to look at the footholds and the areas that they can penetrate in through and see how far they can get. Obviously, they got in to this network, and they've injected the malware, and it's instantly frozen the store out, frozen everything. And if you're doing a lot of e-commerce, then that's your business for the day. If you're doing anything on a computer, that's you locked out. And again, is what they're doing while you're locked out is an equal, shock and horror. So they obviously, as it says there, everything is in there. All company records, employee records, everything else, receipts, vendors, everything. All of that stuff then becomes, all of those details then become a further crime. You're opening these people up to personal fraud, everything, all data crimes towards them. They can then turn all their attentions to these other people. So now we've had a little bit of education on the system and on the threat. The insurance say that they paid out $15,000. That's great. What did you pay for the insurance in the year? But now we've been told, the average company with less than 150 people can be anywhere between, 100 grand to $500,000, but you're only paying out 15 grand. What is the use of that end of your insurance? What happens if it happens again? We're yet to find out. So this one is, again, the same, similar scenario. Store owner downloads an email attachment he believes from his bookkeeper. That malware is stored in the email, opens and instantly encrypts wherever it can get to. That locks him out. And then you start to panic. You obviously haven't had this before. You haven't got your backups. You don't know what to do. So you call the insurance company. What happens if they take 3 days to come out? And as we discussed, this is a $10,000 payout. IT fees and legal expenses are covered. That's great. But then we start asking the question, the ransom was paid in Bitcoin, and that says it there in bold. So who paid that ransomware? Does that come as part of your insurance? Does the insurance, do you pay it out first and then claim it back? Like all these sorts of things, you need to start asking. You need to take these questions away and ask your insurance company. Because at the minute, we believe they're not doing enough for you. You pay for this. And I know we have online in various discussion groups, and we're not trying to rubbish Jewelers Mutual. We don't ping them out. It's just that they do have these case files. A lot, the others don't. We actually went to several jewelers in the industry and asked for, not jewelers, but several insurance companies in this industry, and asked for their facts and figures that we could anonymize or receive anonymized already about the cyber crimes and everything else. But no one's taking this as seriously as it should be. This is going to be, in the next 3 years, one of your biggest threats, if not the biggest threat you face. So a little bit of facts and figures. In 2020, they reckon that 55% of businesses with less than 100 employees suffered this form of attack, this phishing emails that had this ransomware attached in malware version. 75% of those attacks were on companies making less than 50 million in revenue. So these are the smaller stores they're now targeting. They know you don't have this capability in-house. you outsource it. So already it will take you that much longer to recover. And if they're not used to this, then you have to pay. Okay, and that leads us on to how they hack through your systems. So to hack a system is to gain illegal access, to illegal, unauthorized access into your system or computer for an illegal purpose, illicit purpose. There's numerous tools that the hackers use. I mean, we mentioned the vulnerability scans. That's only part of the tools they use. So the idea with these scans is that instantly they can run them in the background. You wouldn't be alerted, you wouldn't know. So they run them in the background, and it tells them everything to do with your system. And some of these are free. We obviously pay and license the ones we use, but the hackers aren't bothered by fancy reports. They're not bothered about how deep they can get in. They only want to know something is there, and they will look for themselves. And then once they're in, it's untold drama. It's untold, especially if they can start getting your credentials. That's an extra payday. So we're talking about hackers and people getting in. Who are these people? And the easiest way to describe it is this is the group. So you got the black hat hackers, grey hackers, white hackers. And the easiest way to describe it is it's from a Western film. So the black hat hackers are the bad guys. They are the ones that are trying to gain illegal access for illicit purpose. They are not meant to be there. They are trying to steal and harvest whatever they can, not only your money and ransomware, not only your personal information by phishing or by hacking into your systems, but not only are they going to sell that, they're then going to hold you and steal as much and get you to buy them Bitcoin. It's untraceable. And then you have on the far other side, white hat hackers. For want of a better comparison, that's what we are. So, we would go into your systems. We will hack your systems, but to do so, we will need, letters of engagement, official permission. And then we operate under a strict scope of works. So, for instance, we have done a website analysis for another client within the retail industry, and we found that we can link not only his company, but several others through his website because it's a shared server. And that causes some issue. But obviously, we can't test how far we can get into another company because we're under a set scope of works. If we were a black hat hacker, or even perhaps a grey one, we would go into these other companies and attack those as well. And that leads us on to the grey hat hackers. They do it for fun. They will find holes in your system. They will go in simply because they're bored, and they will go in. And then when they're in there, they may or may not ask for money to fix the problems they've found, and in order for them to leave, you will have to pay them. So they're the lesser of the two evils. Okay, the British Airways hack. Obviously in England we're still locked down here, so the chances of us actually seeing an airplane in the sky are very far and few between moments now. But in 2018, they had one of the biggest hacks going. It had not been seen on this sort of scale before. And how? They had a data breach of 420,000 customers. And that included staff names and all employee details, as well as the credit card numbers and names and addresses of all clients and people who booked through these flights. Not only were British Airways held to ransom to get their website and their servers back, that you were also taken to a spoofed website where you could put in your details, and those details were harvested as well and sold on the black market areas of the web. Very little has been admitted about the British Airways hack by the company. But the advanced theory in the industry is that their website wasn't maintained. So they had the basket, click buy now. It wasn't maintained. So they actually had a vulnerability that was known right the way back from 2010. And they just hadn't got around to updating and plugging this particular patch. So instantly, when you run a vulnerability scan, it comes back as a compliance element. This is known throughout the security industry as being a poor security port, and they took full advantage. So much so that when it was reported here in England and in Europe that they were investigated, and they were just about to get fined £183 million, but COVID hit. So with everyone shut down. Obviously in England, nothing's open here, so no one's going anywhere. We're a year into it now, so they're only being fined 20 million, simply because they're looking to go out of business unless we get back on the air. So they think with data breaches such as this, such a monumental data breach, they say that 88% of data breaches come from human error. But when they go in, and you'll see this if you ever have it, that they go in and question your staff, only 40% admit to either making the mistake or even knowing about it. So if you're not educating your staff and you don't have that relationship with them where they can come to you and they have fear of losing their job or fear of doing something wrong, then you won't even know if they've done something until it's too late. So how can you, and how could have British Airways prevented this hack? Well, the easiest thing to do is to go to your web provider and ask, what are the latest updates you'll run? When is the maintenance taking place? What security upgrades have gone on? And then, go forward with the questioning. You pay for this service. So ask them if they record the attempts of hacking into your website. We record the ones from HMH. And predominantly it is from Russia, China, and South America, weirdly, that these numbers come from. And you can tell because they generally just try and jam your website constantly. So we test and adjust, and we can work around it. But if they're not recording these figures, how are they doing? How are they upgrading your website? How do they know what to do? They're not moving your pieces on the chessboard. You're staying as you are while the enemy is moving theirs. And that takes us on to website spoofing. So, basically what is website spoofing? So you'll go to log on to your, say for instance, the previous British Airways. You'll go to log on to your website and it'll be an exact carbon copy, right down to the adverts. You wouldn't even know the difference. You'll dial into, whatever the address is you're going to, Bank of America, and the website will look exactly the same. So you enter your username, your password, and that's then captured. So not only have you given them the keys to your empire, but they will go to the official Bank of America website and they will log it in. So the aim of it is to simply steal as much of your information as possible while you're on that website before you know. Which leads us on to the two biggest spoofing websites and cybercrimes that America has seen. So on the left, I know we've only got half of it there, but we can make this available. That is the actual spoofed copy of the Bank of America website. So everyone went onto this website and entered their company details, their personal details, to do their online banking for various reasons. And not only did you give them the keys to your empire, the keys to your account, they then went in and stole everything and harvested everything. So it's a double effort for them. They can take your money and your details and sell them. It's the jewel. It's the jewel of it, the jewel in the crown. And that's why these cybercrimes are becoming so popular and so frequent. It's because they are getting that much better. They say the phishing emails are becoming that much more sophisticated that humans are generally not catching them. So you have to have the software to do it. Ransomware, you can't get around it without software. And again, the spoofed emails are becoming that much more sophisticated. You just won't know the difference. And Target actually was one of the first cybercrimes in the United States. It happened in 2013, and they lost 40 million card payments on credit cards. This was the biggest, and still is one of the biggest cybercrimes to go ahead, and is actually the reason why America bought in the new chip and pin cards, simply because they lost 40 million of the old strip cards. The cybercrime, you know, and the fraud was through the roof just from these two alone. And there's obviously 5 or 6 types of this variant of cybercrime in itself. But, you know, if we go too far into it, it'd just be horrific, it'd scare you to death. And lastly, the point of sale attacks. So we have on our websites and within our stores, we have the point of sale terminals. And on our websites, we have, you know, the carts, the shopping carts, buy now, element. During the COVID pandemic, you know, between April 2020, when we first shut down, we saw online purchases rise by 50%. So it was simply because everyone you couldn't buy anything anywhere. So everyone went online. All businesses adapted and went online. And then hackers know this. And it was sort of a field day for them. They then tested and adjusted their routes and came back stronger. One particular group actually had, they built software that they could load up onto your website. They could load, and it would actually go around a series of websites and spot for these vulnerabilities within your particular shopping carts. And it would report back to them, and then that's how they would then start looking at you more in depth with the vulnerability scans. Something we didn't mention with the ransomware is if you pay for it on your own without telling anyone. It's actually, I forgot to mention, it's quite a horrendously bad point. So if you do pay for the ransomware and you don't tell your insurance companies, you don't tell the authorities, and you just go ahead, hopefully I'll just get the key. That's great. But some of these cyber attack groups have been labeled as home terrorist organizations, you know, as terrorist organizations. And if you pay for them, if you fund them, you know, you're going to have the FBI and Homeland Security knocking on your door, knocking on the front door of your store, simply because you've then funded terrorism. It will, you know, the legalities of it alone are shocking. The Lazarus group that we've just mentioned is actually known to have come out of North Korea. And they invented that sniffer attack that we spoke about earlier. That's one of their mainstays of software. Another aspect of that sniffer attack was if they could get into your infrastructure within the store, they would position a piece of software within the actual card terminal. Now, the benefits of having that for them and for yourselves before the fraud is that this particular piece of software kept the card machine working. So it would repair the card machine in stages and keep it working, simply because they could harvest more data from you and your customers. The only reason that this was spotted was because there was an infrastructure test and there was a slight misconfiguration within the terminal, and that's how it was found. And now it's been going on ever since. Now, you know, we've tested and adjusted, they have now gone away, and no doubt that particular software will be back. So on to another case file regarding this. This particular jewelry store had a point of sale device in several locations that were linked. I mean, you know, for ease, why wouldn't you share a server between your stores? You know, you're not aware of this education. You're not aware of the, you know, the threats that are coming at you. So you stored your customer data, you stored their credit card details, their information. You know, it makes for a more, you know, a closer knit client experience. The only problem is that when they get into your systems and you suffer a data breach, and apparently, you know, as so happens here from one of the point of sale devices, they had a data breach that breached all their customer details as well as the stores. The only difference is that one particular customer complained to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. That began, you know, a possible class suit, same as the British Airways one. There's now 200,000 people trying to sue British Airways through the courts, and they have been awarded between £2,000 and £15,000 each. It'll be the same with this. How are you going to go back to your client base and say, you know, not only are they now opened up to various different cyber crimes and personal crimes, but they now have to go to their banks, get everything changed, and then adjust that. And not only that, when you complain, when they complain against you, you have the Federal Trade Commission coming after you for legalities, and you will pay a fine for this. The other aspect is who patches your point of sale devices in the States. In England, it's actually done by the terminal software company that you buy. Who patches this into your infrastructure? Who patches it on your website? You need to go away and ask, because if it's you and you're not doing it, then again, that's a misconfiguration. You're leaving yourself open for this sort of thing. And luckily, that's us. It's a very brief overview of what we have, this new threat that's going to come at you. What we will say is we'll give you some simple tips. So you now know that there's 5 different very simple cyber crimes that are bringing in multi-million dollars. They are not going to stop doing it. So we advocate the training of your staff. We do phishing campaigns. We advocate training and awareness. So do the phishing campaigns, get them done. If your staff click on the training phishing campaign and enter any details, it will come back to us or another service provider. We will know it's you. Those details are already secured. And then we can send them the training video. And it makes them more aware of the socially engineering aspects, and that they will be used against them. Make your staff part of your frontline defense. Everyone now has a website. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a website these days. So you should be going to your website providers and asking the following questions, like, are they providing the maintenance updates, and when? What are the security updates they are providing for you, and when? And then, we advocate getting the vulnerability scans. You don't have to use us. You can use anyone, but go to a reputable company, go to someone you can trust, and get these scans done. They will show you instantly. There's proof of concepts that, if you get them done and you're good, then amazing. If you're bad, then you can take this to your website provider and they have to patch it. It's generally 2 weeks for remediation. And again, we are talking to the insurance companies within the industry. We advocate not only the training and the certain scans for your website, but we do the infrastructure. Everything in your store has an internet connection, from your phone to your computers to your printer, every single thing now. And we take it for granted that these things are safe. They're not, they're not as safe as we are led to believe. So have these assessments performed that would show you where your misconfigurations lie, show you, where the patches aren't done. And then you can take this to your insurance company and say, look, we're putting this money, this effort, this awareness back into our store. Why are you only paying us $10,000 if the worst should happen? You can show them that you've gone to these extra lengths, and hopefully we can negate the need for the insurance company payouts. And you can also lessen your premiums. Who wouldn't want that? Data breaches. If you go onto our website, we can offer one for free. It'll be a snapshot of any data breach that you or your company have had. We'll do the first one for free. We'll give you the confidential report. We will ask to speak to you on the phone, simply because anyone can ask for this with your company, and we can't give it out for licensing. So we will speak to you on the phone, and then we'll give you the report for free. We'll tell you what it means. So just go on and have a look. And lastly, access control for your staff. No one should be, quickly paying the bookkeeper $58,000 unless they're known to, that is in their job role. No one should be doing this sort of thing. No one should have access to it. And if they can't gain access, then we can encrypt certain areas of your servers. There's not an open forum anymore. This sort of thing has to be segmented and secured. And lastly, and I can hear people yawning in the background, don't worry, we're finishing up. These are just the tidbits. Go to your insurance company, whoever provides you, and you have the initial, you have the extra policy bolt-on for cybersecurity. Go to them and ask. If you have these things done, you're raising the awareness. You have the campaigns, the assessments, the scans, and you have these bits, plugged and played and ready to roll. Why aren't you getting the breaks with your policy? Why aren't you paying less for your premiums? And then should the worst happen, they still gain access, they still hack you, they still get in. Why are you only getting $10,000 payouts? You know, this is not going away, I'm afraid. This is going to be the next big thing. So, and on that note, after we didn't mean to scare you, but, you know, take the knowledge and take the awareness away, I'd like to say thank you to Mike for letting me have this moment and try and educate the industry.